Yo, what's up guys? Jason Ma the Magician, and this is my second channel, baby. A channel about gaming, and what better way to kick it off than with my top 4 deck profile. That's right, I just played the Oceanics, that's the Australian New Zealand WCQ, baby, and I got top 4 and then won the playoff for next in line for Worlds.
Wow.
And so to kick this channel off, I'm going to be giving you the deck profile, the source, the sacred source of the deck that I played. Full disclosure, I played KASHTIRA. Now before you sit there and go, oh, no wonder you did well, you played Cash. Well, a lot of people played Cash, but I don't see them running around with the top 4, you know what I'm saying? Now before we dive into the profile, make sure that you smash like if you haven't already and subscribe, because with all your engagement, I could have a second channel that does as well as the other channel that I have. I have another channel if you want to check that out. And without any further ado, let's take a look at that deck. Alright, so kicking off the deck profile, we started off with 3 whole entire KASHTIRA Fenris. This card's insane for obvious reasons. The card is strong. Attack a thing, banish a thing, monster effect activated on resolution, banish a thing. It's just the thing that does a thing. I like it a lot. Also, the search in this deck, I mean, obviously the search is insane, but in its own archetype, it's particularly crazy. Now, as well as that, I played the obvious 2 copies of KASHTIRA Unicorn. This card is also insane. Putting it to 2 definitely didn't do its job. It needs to go to 1 or just ban it. But searching spells is good. You can also use it as a bluff and make people think that you don't have specific cards in your hand by searching the other card. I also played just 2 copies of a Rise Heart. Well, Rise Heart. This card is very good. 2 was fine. Like, at no point was I particularly stressed by not having it. This card is great though, because you can just reset your engine. Like in the later games, you can banish cards to trigger their effects to add cards back. This just is super helpful for the grindy game. You know what I mean? And I think you do. Now, I don't know how people feel about this card in particular, but I did play 1 copy of KASHTIRA Ogre. This card is 28, it is enormous. Also, being able to look at the top cards of your opponent's deck can actually put you in a position where your opponent can't play. Like when they're top decking, you look at the top of their deck. If you don't like the card they're about to draw, you banish it. You banish it face down, and it makes it extremely difficult for them to crawl their way back into an already lost game. Now, as well as that, just 1 copy of the KASHTIRA Scareclaw. This card is just an extender, or it actually helps get you back in the game in troubled situations. Also great for dealing with Cusco, if that's the thing that's coming up, but also the negate effect. This is actually something that people, I think, forget about. This card is so useful for dealing with certain effects, especially in the Pearly matchup when they try to use their effects in the battle phase. This negates those effects, which is super helpful. So that pretty much rounds it up for the obvious cards, and now there's a few more obvious cards, and then it starts to get a little bit spicy, you know what I mean? So I played obviously the 3 copies of Shifter in the main. In some cases this can just be a straight up FTK. This card is insane. I cannot believe that they put Gemma to 1, they didn't bring Called By back or anything, and they left this at 3. This card being pretty much unchecked is not very fair at all, so I had to play it because you can just squeak out a free win with it. Now, this is where my list differs tremendously from most other lists, and that's that I played 3 copies of Nibiru, the Primal Being, in the main deck. This card was insane all format, for me at least. A lot of KASHTIRA players are very greedy, so it was like super easy to drop a nib on them. You just summon the token and attack, and you can crash the Nibiru if necessary. It's not always necessary to have to crash it, but if you want to get your Primal Being off the field, you could just crash into the token, and then you play in the main phase too. You do have to remember though that you have to have an out, because you can't banish the token that you summon on their field face down, so you have to come up with a new way to out it, which can be so friggin' annoying sometimes. But if you play cautiously and you play correctly, this is not going to be an issue for you. Now, going on with the hand traps, I played directly into Triple Tactics Talents. I played 3 copies of Ash in the main. The reason why I played into Tactics Talents is because that card kills me going first and it kills me going second. If they have it, they have it, so I might as well play into it. There's no point being afraid of a card that either way is going to affect me negatively. So I played into it with cards that would essentially just straight up win me matches against particularly Rogue, but also the KASHTIRA matchup. This card is very strong. Now, here's one that a lot of people won't agree with, but this was absolutely the MVP for me the entire day. I'm talking Ghost Ogre, baby! Look at that guy. Ghost Ogre. I mean, whatever, it's 2023, it can be whatever it wants. Ghost Ogre, this card was crazy. It won me so many games, and every time I dropped it, my opponent would say the same thing, and that was, "You play Ghost Ogre? Yeah, this card was crazy. I cannot believe how many games I won for free simply by dropping a Ghost Ogre. Now, you can't use it while a macro is up, but there is a reason besides having Ghost Ogre's effect that I did play this card, and I'll show you later. But now that pretty much rounds it up for the monsters, and now we go into the spells. Now, a lot of people played power spell decks with the KASHTIRA. I didn't really vibe that, so I played just 3 copies of the field spell. Obviously, this card is ridiculous. It is so strong. The ability to pop a card for free and just add, and also the increase of attack. Everything about this card is ridiculous. So obviously 3 copies of that. Up next we got KASHTIRA Theosis. Now this is a card that exists in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's okay. I often sided out 1 copy going second, but going first, I guess you kind of want to see it. It is helpful. But the main reason for playing this card is the banish effect, being able to add resources back and continuously loop and play into multiple turns of a grind game. This card allows it to happen. It's crazy. It's a very good card. I played it 3. Now I also play 3 copies of Birth. This card is the staple of the deck. It is the heart and soul. It is your follow-up. And often cases, I would always try to keep a copy in my hand for like turn 2 or 3. Because I didn't want to, load and just run into some craziness and then not have a follow-up. So I played an extremely conservative style with this deck and was always able to play multiple turns because I had follow-up. This card allows it to happen. It's crazy, man. And I consider this just part of the staples. Obviously, this card is just, it's Pot of Prosperity. You banish 6 good cards from your extra deck, you attach them to your Rise Heart, you're good to go. You know what I mean? Now, I did play 3 one-ofs in this deck, and this is where my deck gets a little strange. I played, obviously, a copy of Terraforming. That's a 4th field spell. I played 1 copy of Pot of Desires. And I know what you're thinking. Why not just play 2? I don't have an answer for you, to be honest. I wanted to play exactly 40 cards, and I also wanted to fit this in, Triple Tactics Talent. Now, if I could have played this at 3, I probably would have. However, I had a different plan in mind, so I played it at just 1 in the main, and that plan will come to fruition shortly. Now that's all of the spells. Lastly, we have the traps. I played 3 copies of Infinite and Permanence, so I played a lot of hand traps. And the main reason for a lot of hand traps is because everyone seemed to be playing evenly matched, and I didn't want to have to set 5 power spell cards and then get evenly and die. So I would summon 1 Arise and then sit on it, and they would evenly nothing basically, and then I could just hand trap them into oblivion. So that was the whole strategy. As well as that, I also played the 1 copy of KASHTIRA Big Bang. This card is insane. If you're not constantly attaching it and then detaching it to add back a material from underneath a monster, I solemn summoned with this card. To be honest, I very, very rarely and infrequently would summon a monster. I would often add them back to my hand so that I'd have some craziness on the crackback. And this card allowed me to start every turn with 4 cards in hand. I'd do my combo, and then I'd start turn 2 or 3 with an additional 4 cards in hand. And I can't lose. Now, last but certainly not least, KASHTIRA Preparations. This card was amazing. It came up definitely against the Labyrinth matchup, and also the fact that you can summon monsters back during your opponent's turn as well just makes this card a little bit cracked. It is a little bit slow, but you're not playing a particularly large engine. You only play 8 monsters in the main deck that are KASHTIRA, so it's kind of nice to just have cards that get you there outside of those cards, if that makes sense. Anyway, that's the main deck. Exactly 40 cards, baby! And now we move on to the extra deck. Now, the extra deck is pretty standard with the 1 copy of Arise Heart. This card exists, and it is a card that people play. I don't know what else to say about it. The card's very unreasonable. It'll probably get banned. Now, as well as that, I played 3 copies of Shangri-Ira. This card is insane. Now, the reason why I played it at 3 is because I really like overlaying it on top of things and then going into the Arise Heart to get additional material underneath it, and or using it to make Zeus. Which brings us to the next card. Double copies of AAA Zeus. Both different rarities, because I'm a scrub. Whatever, the card is insane, very strong this format, especially in the mirror. Zeus, they're bored, and they their pants. They don't know what to do. Oh, it's a very good card. Now, as well as that, I played 1 copy of number 11 Big Eye. I also played 1 copy of the Dark Armed, the Dragon of Annihilation. This card was really, really good, being able to just clear boards and put them on extremely low cards, super helpful. Sadly, if you use the effect to pop, you can't attack, but you can always attack first and then use the pop. It's a great way to out multiple cards. And of course, this copy of Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosac. This card is necessary. I didn't make it often, but it did come up against things like Skill Drain, and I was glad I had it. So this card, you might as well keep it, you know? And now for the chef special of the list, okay? Obviously we have the standard Donna for hire, the Goliath, of course, and Elder Entity Natis. These cards are all fairly standard. Natis to pop things is always super useful if they're going to out your Arise Heart. Goliath making your Arise Heart indestructible, also very good. And Donna to be able to not only clear your board for plays, but also remove one of their threatening monsters. Super useful. Now these are the 3 cards that I played that I think most people didn't play, but maybe should have, okay? So I played 1 copy of Baron de Fleur. This card is very good, especially when you play 5 Ghost Sisters. I was able to make this card and combo off, and it was just helpful a lot of the time. Another card that I played was Psyframe Lord Omega. This is a card that is super useful for recycling resources. You just attach it to the Arise. If they out your Arise, you can shuffle the Arise back, make it next turn. You could do all kinds of stuff with this card. It was super helpful, and I loved it. It was a good card. Now, as well as that, we've got this sucker. Boom! Nobody plays this except for me, and it did come up. I was glad that I played it. I don't know why. You know, this was like a 4 a.m. in the morning crackhead split decision, you know what I mean? I was sitting there, I was like, I don't know what to play. I slapped this in. I was glad I put it in. It came up against a branded player who summoned a Dragoon that had negated a thing. It was 4K, untargetable. You know, it's just very difficult to deal with. I put this on the field after having used the Desires, and my opponent was like, who plays that? They're all just like, who plays that? Maybe it's objectively bad deck building, but listen, it worked for me. Now moving swiftly onwards to the side deck. The side deck for me was a nice, neat 3 of all the way through. So the reason why I played the 1 ofs previously is because I played 3 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust. This card is very good. I was able to search exactly what I needed for any situation. I almost always sided this card in going second. This card was insane. Wouldn't main it, but definitely for the fact that 66% of your games are played sided, this card was super, super helpful and useful, and I really enjoyed it. 10 out of 10, would play it again. Now, of course, evenly matched for those degenerate back row decks. You could clear out most of their stuff, and you could use cards to remove the remainder. This card was solemn used, and often I would just side in 1 copy of this with the 3 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust, and this would just give me options. You know, my opponents would make a play, and then I could respond to it accordingly, adding the thing that I need for that situation. If they have a lot of negation, I might add something like a Dark Ruler, or if they had not so much negation but a big board presence, then this card was definitely the one to add. Now, speaking of Dark Ruler no more, I did play 3 copies of that in the side deck. This card, often I would side in 1 copy because, you know, boards didn't really churn out heaps of negates. A lot of decks this format were mid-range decks, so they might have a few negates and a few interruptions, but you could play through them most of the time. You didn't really need to side in 3. I did, however, side in 3 against someone who was playing Vanadium. He also went to the top cut as well with Vanadium, which was impressive. I versed him. It was a fun game. But anyway, this card, I never resolved it once. But it's still nice to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Yeah? Now, a lot of people played like Kaijus and stuff like that, but I was okay with losing my normal summon to play Lava Golem. This card I sided in a lot. In fact, there was a matchup against a Pearly deck where he had the Noir on the field and the continuous spell as well as a Zeus. So I can't just like out the Noir because he'll add 3 spells back and he'll kill me. However, I also had a Ghost Ogre in my hand. So I dropped this on the field. He tried to trigger the effect of the continuous. I Ghost Ogred it, and then I win the game. It was really, really funny. And the guy was just so shocked once again that I played Ghost Ogre at all. But I'm glad I played it. You know, that card was crazy. Now, last but not least, we played Anti-Spell Fragrance. These obviously are just an FTK against some decks. I played it. I sided it like twice. I didn't really put it in that much. There were just, I don't know, I didn't really feel threatened enough to have to auto win. But there was one matchup where I did side this. I opened 2. I set both. And he comboed a little bit. I tried to interrupt as best I could. He had impermed my Arise Heart, so it was negated. So he wasn't losing things in the grave. And he got to a point where he summoned a Baron de Fleur. He used the effect of the mandatory activation of my Arise Heart to negate and destroy it, and then he used the effect to pop one of my anti-spells, which I chained the second copy to. But if he had have just used the effect instead to pop the anti-spell and then negate the second one, he actually would have won that game. So it was kind of just a funny moment of like minor misplay and being rewarded accordingly. Now that is in truth the entire deck, but it did get me this. Woo! Look at that, huh? A sick-ass trophy with a light. It comes with a light. It's also really heavy. So I also get a copy of probably the worst prize card in recent years, but, you know, I've got it. I actually got 2 copies of it because... Don't ask me, I don't know, but I got 2 of them, so... Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. This is my first video on this channel, so look, obviously not everyone's going to be into KASHTIRA, but I plan on doing a whole array of things, including playing Master Duel, playing live games, even vlogging some of the adventures that I have when I do play Yu-Gi-Oh! I tend to travel a lot for the game, and so whatever, right? Let's just see where this channel takes us. Anyway, big love. I'll see you guys next time.
Enchanté.